Welcome back to the Fighters Corner podcast for another boxing episode. In today's episode, we bring back Miguel Iturrate as we go over the epic Anthony Joshua versus Andy Ruiz bout that shattered the boxing world. But before we do, let's take you back down memory lane and hit this rewind button.
I'm going to give you three names: Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury. One of those guys is going to screw up and lose. Which one of those three do you think it's going to be?
I think it could be Joshua. Well, you know what? What's going to happen is one of these guys, let's pretend we're living in a world where Andy Ruiz beats Anthony Joshua. Where does that put Andy Ruiz?
If you don't think he's getting punched, you've lost your mind.
What type of world are we living with if Andy Ruiz ends up beating Anthony Joshua?
It might be fun to find out.
Eddie Hearn will be on suicide watch.
So who are you taking in this weekend's fights? I know who I got, and it's not who you think. So I'm going to take my picks over to the world's safest and most trusted online gambling site and make a few bets. That's right, it's BetDSI.com. With more than 20 years experience in the online gaming industry, BetDSI has the best sign-up and deposit promotions on the web. They also boast more deposit options than any other betting site, including fast, free, and secure payouts. Also, for our listeners, they are offering a special promotion where you can build a bigger bankroll and get 100% sports cash bonus when using our promo code Fighters Corner, all one word. That's 50% more sports cash by using our promo code Fighters Corner. Check out BetDSI for all your online gaming needs. Also, please don't forget to subscribe, hit like, share, all because you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Radio Player, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, TuneIn Radio, and the guy sitting next to you on the train is probably listening to us too. And if you can, show us your support by finding us on Patreon, where you can let us know how much you love us. And if you're a fan of boxing, jiu-jitsu, kumite, and even capoeira, go check out my guys at UCL MMA. These guys are the heavyweight champions of mixed martial arts shows. And if you think you're the next Johnny Lawrence, go to their website at uclmma.com, shoot them an email and tell them John sent you before asking their matchmaker that you want to defend your All Valley Karate Championship versus one of their fighters. That's uclmma.com. I also want to thank our new Danish friends from Denmark, Malte Castro, who was kind enough to let us use his beats for this podcast. I've listened to his tracks, and this kid's pretty talented for being this young. If you like the track being played right now, go check out his music on Spotify, and you can also find Malte Castro on Instagram and Facebook. Go find this guy. It's pretty good music.
Welcome back to the Fighters Corner podcast. John Goroski. I think we have with us Miguel Iturrate once again. Miguel, we had an interesting weekend of boxing. Would you like to talk about anything that may have taken place?
Well, obviously the big news came out of Madison Square Garden and was aired on DAZN. And what you had the IBF and the WBA and the WBO World Heavyweight titles changing hands as Andy Ruiz Jr. knocked out Anthony Joshua in a major upset in round 7.
Well, you know, Miguel, if we were to do like a flashback machine right now with some weird sound effect, we would right here cut in our predictions in regards to that fight. And our own John Goroski. John, do you care what you had to say in regards to that?
Well, I always had a feeling that Joshua could have been dethroned by Andy Ruiz.
Well, let's actually make this come full circle. All right, so we had a standoff, essentially, between three fighters: Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua, and Deontay Wilder. And like, if you really look at history and you look at Buster Douglas versus Mike Tyson, which this doesn't fall into that category, obviously, but it's a significant upset. So I called Miguel, John, and Jonah, and I said, dude, I got it. These guys aren't going to fight each other for a few years, and the title eliminator bout is going to be the person that gets beat by someone that they bring in that's going to be a heavy underdog.
Yeah.
So, John, what was the idea that we had pitched?
Well, we always seem to touch about the idea that these fighters always not take the big fights, and they're taking these lesser opponents, air quotes, Andy Ruiz being one, Brazil being another example of another one. And eventually...
one of them was going to lose.
One of them was going to lose, and once it did...
But what was our plan? Interview all the people that were coming in for slaughter.
Yeah.
That way, because these like press agents contact us constantly, and it's good. It's a good problem to have. And what they do is they try to like push people onto us, and we're a new show, so like we don't really have any marketplace in the combat sports arena yet. So initially, they kept trying to get us all like, what we refer to as the job squad, the guys that are just coming in to get beat up. And I'm telling John, dude, let's just interview all those guys, talk about game plan and strategy. And we're probably going to be the only show with an interview prior to them going into the ring. And when one of them wins, boom, it's going to hit.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a sound plan.
Yeah. No, and that's the plan that we put in place.
And we tried. How many times did you call for Ruiz?
I actually spoke to him a few times, and back in April, like right before it got announced, he's like, yeah, dude, I'd love to go, get on your show and talk about it. But I think, in my opinion, time wasn't on his side for one.
No,
and this is how serious he took
He wouldn't give us a time of day. In fact, I don't think he did any.
No, he didn't. I don't think he did any of you.
Not a single one.
I mean, he might have did like local radio that was probably like 2 or 3 minutes long, and that's it. But I mean, like for him to, I told him like, dude, we're gonna need about a half an hour.
Yeah,
and
he didn't have it.
No, but I think we're gonna get one shortly. That's my honest opinion.
But think about this: the title eliminator, which is essentially losing to somebody like a Ruiz. We wanted all of those guys.
Yeah,
like we don't care about the A side. Give us the B side, because the B side is where the gold is.
Yeah. And
unfortunately, it didn't work out for us. But we knew that one of these guys was going to lose.
Yeah.
And in terms of training camp and stuff like that, like I've got friends in Europe. None of them with any connection to Joshua, so I couldn't get any insight onto his camp. But Miguel, have you heard that he had been knocked out a week prior or 2 weeks prior in training camp?
No, to be honest, I hadn't heard that.
Yes, and, that's the rumor.
He can confirm or deny that. I don't know if it really matters all that much in terms of that stuff. Sometimes it looks like more damage control when it comes out after the fact or anything like that. So I'm pretty sure that, they're desperate to spin things. In the immediate aftermath of the fight, it looked like Joshua was relatively classy. I saw a tweet from George Foreman.
I do a podcast that is fight-oriented. Some would dispute that.
I wish I'd been that classy when Ali knocked me out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he was pretty together and stuff. But I think once he got back, once he was on the plane with Eddie Hearn, they're probably looking at hundreds of millions of dollars lost. At least what they were planning or what they were thinking where they were going to go.
Yeah.
So I'm not surprised that they're trying to put out as much information as possible to obscure, some facts there.
One of the rumors that I heard too was that that Joshua during or before the fight had like a panic attack in the dressing room before the fight, and his dad went up to Eddie Hearn and said, "You can't let Anthony fight tonight."
I don't think anybody knows what they're doing anymore. How does a guy like Anthony Joshua get to this level and have a panic attack prior to a fight? Where does this come from?
You're taking him out of his comfort zone. This is his first fight on American soil versus a heavy-handed Mexican.
Last minute.
Yeah.
Heavy-handed Hispanic.
And it's a tough world for him to come into and maybe try to find success. And that's what happened too. And then
Well, if you watched during the fight, John, he constantly was looking at his corner when he was having issue. Yeah. It was like, are you guys going to help me? Are you guys going to help me? And then like in between rounds, the conversations between himself and the corner, he was, I'm not going to say scared, because that's not the proper term, right? Anthony Joshua is not scared of Deontay Wilder. He's not scared of Tyson Fury.
No.
He's going to fight those guys. But it was almost...
For less money now.
Well, I would say it was a lack of confidence rather than scared, because that's not an accurate description.
We're not going to say a world champion is ever scared. It's a complete disrespect to him
100%.
and the sport. So we're not going to say that. I do think that he got knocked down 3 times, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I think
4.
Was it 4?
Oh, on the 4th one is when they called.
Oh, okay. You're right.
So I think mentally he clocked out after the first one.
Well, Miguel, what was your opinion of the chatter in between rounds in regards to that fight?
Now, keep it watch. I watched a Mexican channel broadcast, so we didn't get the same access to it. I had a very much a. It's funny because Ruiz. I give Ruiz a lot of credit, and I give Ruiz credit for trying to use everything he can now to become a star and stay where he is. Because I don't know how Mexican he is. He's that Mexican American thing didn't always come up in all of his promos in the last 10 years or so that he's been around. You know what I mean? And I've heard his Spanish. His Spanish is pretty good. It's pretty good.
Wow,
it's not a native Spanish, so he's a native English speaker, not a native Mexican. But he can use whatever he wants to use that. And I was listening to that broadcast, so I didn't experience that chatter. But I think Jonathan hit it right on the head. I think Ruiz knew, and I think it's important when a fighter recognizes that he's done some damage. I think Ruiz knew after the first knockdown that he had it. And I think that he was really brilliant in fighting round 4 and 5 at Joshua's pace, letting him feel a little bit off the hook. But yeah, I think Joshua completely lost it from the first knockdown down.
Yeah, that's what I agree to. Now, fast forward a little bit. I think recently, as of today, the IBF is pretty much giving Andy Ruiz a mandatory challenger for the bout. Now, I'm learning the way how things are working with IBF and WBO and WBC. Like, what happens, Miguel, when IBF says, "Hey, we're demanding that this challenger, you accept this fight"? Like, how does that work? Like, take me down that timeline of when Andy Ruiz gets notification from the IBF saying, "Here, this is a mandatory challenger. You have to take this bout." And what happens next, or what could happen? Go ahead, Miguel.
Okay, any of the boxing commissions, keep in mind he's got 3 belts, right? So any one of them could come forward at any time in the relatively short future, or they could sit around and wait to see what happens. But in the relatively short future, they could all come out and give him a mandatory challenger. Mm-hmm. The problem becomes that they could all be different challengers from all the different organizations, and that's where you get...
It's a mess
sometimes
again.
An organization might say, well, that's not our challenger, so the belt's going to be vacated.
Wait, Miguel, this is how they juice the champion for money.
Yeah.
That's
what this is.
Exactly. Absolutely. I mean, it is the sanctioning bodies are a ridiculous game, but they are an entity that are at play here, so we might as well deal with them for what they are. So what's going to happen here, and I think Hearn, you got to give Hearn credit. I think he's the sharpest promoter in boxing right now. He definitely took a pie in the face this weekend, but I'm pretty sure that you didn't sign a contract with Anthony Joshua that didn't have an immediate rematch clause, and probably gives him the power to make the rematch in London. He was already a champion 3 or 4 defenses in, even maybe 5 defenses into his championship reign. So stuff like that just becomes standard in the contract. We'll see if Ruiz can duck some of those.
I'd like to interject real quick and break some news. And Eddie Hearn, as recently as like 3 hours ago, said that after meeting with AJ, Rob, and the management team in New York, we today have triggered the contract rematch clause with Andy Ruiz Jr. The fight will take place in November, December at a venue to be confirmed shortly.
Right, now what's weird is Anthony Joshua's post-fight press conference said that he was so confident he was going to win this bout that there was no rematch clause in it. See, that's like a negotiating tactic, John, so... Let's just say you're going to make $100.
If he doesn't have a rematch clause, he should fire Eddie Hearn right now.
Yeah,
that's the bottom line. Is that was just talk. I mean, I'm pretty confident there was a rematch clause.
Well, I can only tell you what literally came out of Anthony Joshua's mouth. So essentially, let's just say I'm going to give you $1,000, and you're the challenger, okay? And like your thing is, okay, well, take the, I don't want a rematch clause in here in case I win. Okay, well, we're going to throw you another $200 for the rematch clause. It's just, it's kind of like negotiating a property here. And Joshua claimed there was no rematch clause, but, at the end of the day, money talks.
I'm sure he wasn't thinking about losing, though. You know what I mean? So,
but
the rematch clause is probably the last thing that he's thinking about.
Did you hear what Miguel, repeat what your last statement was in regards to that rematch clause.
Whatever Joshua says is fine, and whatever he actually is aware of is fine. But he's paying people to take care of stuff like that for him. And like I said, if he did not have a rematch clause, then he should fire Eddie Hearn, because that's what Hearn's there for. And Hearn's acting like there's a rematch clause from the very beginning. He said he can force it in London. The idea of a venue to be named later could be, the difference between the O2 and, maybe they do it in Manchester, or maybe they do it in one of the stadiums. So, but I think we're heading to England for this one. And I don't think that Andy Ruiz is going to have too much wiggle room. What has to happen at that point is, if the organizations come forward with another mandatory challenger that isn't Joshua and try to force that match, then there's a negotiating period where, Joshua, Andy Ruiz, and those promoters, this happened with Golovkin and Alvarez in the past as well. They would pay somebody to sit down. You know what I mean? So somebody who is the mandatory, like Povetkin is another example of a guy who allowed Wilder several defenses before he signed for the fight. And what it was is he was receiving a side check. Here's $300,000 not to fight, and to allow the fight to happen. So the mandatories will probably receive a nice paycheck and to not fight. Put it this way: if you're getting a paycheck to not fight, that's more than you are usually getting to fight.
I'll take
then
that.
That's what's going to happen. And Wilder so Joshua's still going to have a lot of power to force this rematch.
Another question, too, for you, Miguel, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the title holder, whether it's the IBF, WBA, or WBC, they have to pay every year a fee to the commission just to hold the belt, right? And this could be a couple $100,000, right? I mean, you're paying the
$100,000 per bout.
I thought it was just
no. The fees are not annual; they're per bout.
Oh, okay.
And, the fees can be exorbitant. They usually come down to being a percentage of your purse. So say you were to make $10 million for this fight, like Joshua likely did. What's 10% of that? So the IBF guys. There's a reason why those organizations are there and operating, and that's because they've been there for a long time and
they know the game
about it.
Oh yeah.
They
know
but the bottom line is
they can judge real estate.
It's a cash. They throw conventions and things like that, and invite boxers and things like that. But all those guys are flying around on the sweat of the boxers, and going to the fights live and doing all that stuff. It's a little bit of a buddy system, and more than a true measure of who the champions are.
Yeah. So Miguel, let's say hypothetically that a rematch does happen indeed between Andy Ruiz and Anthony Joshua. Take me through what the odds could look like for that bout. And let's assume that it's in London. What do you think it could be?
Well, I think, there's going to be a little bit of a tightening of the line. When I saw the line for this last fight, Ruiz closed around a plus 1,300, plus 1,350, right in that neighborhood, which means for a $100 bet, you're going home with a 1,300, additional dollars for the win. I think that will obviously shrink, but I'm not sure how much it'll shrink.
You think Joshua still goes in as a favorite?
Yeah, especially if it's in London.
Wow.
Yeah, and he could be a very wide favorite still.
Wow.
The bottom line is I think I saw what you saw, what a lot of people saw. I think that Ruiz had the right mix and stuff, but there is that time and place and stuff, and the other guy had a lot of momentum. I don't know that everybody is going to jump off his bandwagon at some, right now and stuff. And, Ruiz is going to have to do it again in London. It doesn't get easier. It gets harder, so we'll see what he can do. More power to Ruiz, but, throughout his career, there have been times where, he's taken some time off and people, Top Rank, when he was with Top Rank, they actually questioned his motivation, whether he liked the sport or not. I think they were way off. I think he wasn't feeling the love, and that he's always been very dedicated to the sport. But at the end of the day, no one pictured him being a world champion at this point. So what he makes of it, if he goes out and loses the rematch, maybe they do a trilogy. Eddie Hearn's already mentioned a trilogy, but maybe he also fades into oblivion like a Buster Douglas.
Yeah. Well, I think the worst thing that happened to Anthony Joshua during that fight was that third round. Was when he initially knocked Ruiz down, and there's an old adage there's an old adage, and it says, "Only fools rush in." And that's what Anthony Joshua did. Mm-hmm. He went from boxing to brawling
to surviving.
And had he just kept boxing and maybe been a little bit boring, maybe stretched it out a few extra rounds, I don't think we'd be having this conversation now.
It's very well possible. Miguel, what's the landscape look like for the heavyweight division in boxing right now? I mean, we've all predicted something like this would happen, where it would just make a mess of things if this, flash-in-the-pan contender comes in and just wrecks a champion's day. So now...
this flash-in-the-pan contender's got one split decision loss.
Yeah.
And it was controversial.
So, what happened...
You know what I mean?
Dude, I'm not discrediting Andy Ruiz at all.
You were the only one that predicted he was going to win.
I did.
You said if... No, not me. You predicted that if an upset was going to take place, it would be this bout.
Yeah, it would be Joshua versus Ruiz.
Yeah.
I thought Deontay Wilder was going to beat Brazil. I didn't discredit Brazil though either, but I thought that if there was going to be a loss,
I thought it would have been a little bit longer than that. I didn't think it was going to be that quick.
Yeah, that's a surprise too. Yeah. But okay, so let's go over the things that we know already so far in this heavyweight division. We got Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder is happening in the fall.
Okay, but prior to that, Deontay Wilder is fighting Ortiz.
I'm sorry, I said Deontay Wilder is fighting.
Okay, he's fighting Tyson Fury next year.
I'm sorry, 2020. You're right.
Yeah.
So he's fighting Ortiz in the fall.
All right, wait. If I were to make a prediction of an additional loss by one of these guys, it would be that bout.
Yeah, there's big risk involved when you're going up against a Cuban in a rematch.
Ortiz is the real deal and was beating Deontay Wilder on the scorecards prior to getting knocked out in the 10th round.
Yeah, it's here. Let's play devil's advocate too. Think about the guys that passed up on this opportunity against Anthony Joshua. Even the Cuban said no. You know what I mean? If he would have said yeah, and he would have got this win over Anthony Joshua,
he could buy that island.
He could. You could definitely buy that
the entire island.
But so let's go over what we know. We know that
let's put it this way: he would have received a Felix Savan type payday had Felix defected and fought Lennox Lewis.
There you go.
That's what we're talking about accurate. On a rematch. 100% that's accurate.
Yeah. So we got Deontay Wilder versus the Cuban coming up in the fall. Now add in the mix. Now add in the mix. We have.
Wait. Miguel, what is your opinion of the Ortiz-Wilder fight? Are fans really clamoring for that? If I'm Wilder, I'm canceling that bout and waiting for Fury. He's going to mess up a payday.
He could mess up a payday.
Miguel, what do you think?
Yeah, it could still fall. It could actually still fall by the wayside. Ortiz is the like the black sheep of the weight class.
Yeah, he's the outlier.
He's sort of hanging around and stuff. I don't know if. Wilder will be favored in that fight, and I don't know if Wilder won't do better with Ortiz than he did last time. With Ortiz maybe being a little older and stuff, I do agree with his pedigree that he's one of the more dangerous of the lot. I think the guy who's going to be interesting to see where he falls and where he starts to operate in the heavyweight division is Alexander Usyk. Usyk is a teammate of Vasyl Lomachenko. He's 15-0.
Miguel.
And he just won.
Miguel, think about this, man. Think about this.
John, his pants moved when he mentioned that name.
Dude, think about this. He's a great cruiserweight, maybe one of the all-time greats up until this point. He hasn't even thrown a fist
in the heavyweight division,
he's top 10.
and he's a top 5.
Is he top 5?
He's a top 5
I thought he was
in a
over
lot of
7 or
lists.
8,
Oh
no?
yeah. So I mean,
Okay.
I know he's coming off the bicep injury. I think that they're going to give him a little bit
Do you know
bit
if
of
it's
a.
upper or lower bicep?
I don't know. I didn't
The
read
upper
that far
bicep
into
takes
it.
forever.
They
Lower
said
bicep's
that
quick.
no surgery was required, so we're guessing
lower.
probably the fall.
It's probably a lower
So-
bicep then.
The
Okay.
problem with Usyk is he's already in his 30s. He started his career a little bit late.
So what?
there
The
may be
Cuban's in
some
his
urgency
50s
to
and he's
move-
getting a
to
heavyweight
move forward.
championship fight.
No, I understand, but there's a little bit of different social economics between the two.
So let's say he gets a fight later on this fall. He gets a victory. Let's say we're just playing hypotheticals here. Deontay Wilder gets a victory. Tyson Fury gets a victory over the German in actually in the next couple weeks. And then you got next year, Deontay Wilder versus Fury. I mean, like, the heavyweight division's looking real good.
Everybody's counting their chickens before the eggs have hatched.
Yeah,
though.
especially Eddie Hearn. Especially.
Eddie Hearn's a brilliant boxing mind.
He is.
This was kind of like his invasion as a promoter into the United States, and it didn't do well.
Nope. Did not at all whatsoever. But I mean, we'll see how it works out.
Miguel, you mentioned about Anthony Joshua being classy. Another strong rumor is that Anthony Joshua's father is furious at Hearn, and Joshua, after the fight, was calming his dad down. Like his dad wanted to go after Eddie. And I'll tell you what, man, he did come across really well. It's difficult. Like, you want to say, hey, man, we're American. We got Deontay Wilder. Bah, 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 bah. But at the end of the day, watching Anthony Joshua, like how he handled himself, it makes it difficult for me to say anything negative about him.
No, Joshua, he's got my respect.
100%.
He's got my respect. I mean, everybody in the heavyweight division. I mean, like, Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder, even
There's
Usyk.
a lot of personality
Oh,
there,
dude,
man.
there is, man. It's exciting, man. It is really, really exciting. And I think, throwing Andy Ruiz now in the mix. You know what I mean? Like, we predicted stuff like this was going to make things messy. I mean, messy in the sense where there's no longer a top 3. Now there's a top 5.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It kind of opened the division up.
It did
if
a little
you really
bit.
Look at it.
Yeah, it did. So what happens if Andy Ruiz beats Joshua in the fall?
Oh
what
my
happens?
God.
What happens?
Well,
You know what I mean? Like,
Well, then at that point, then Eddie Hearn has himself a very large, very handsome former world champion to carry his bags.
that's it.
Oh, Jesus.
Pretty much. You know what I mean? And now
That's awful.
who's the king of England now for boxing? Tyson Fury.
The
And
gypsy.
that's it. Yeah. So, I mean, it's
Miguel, in the history of boxing, I mean, Miguel is an expert from about 1890 on up. Have you ever seen a prevalence like, a Billy Joe Saunders, Tyson Fury? Has the gypsy culture always been this prevalent in terms of top names in the sport of boxing, or is it just recently?
British guys can probably answer that with a lot more detail and a lot more, background knowledge and stuff like that. But at a superficial level, it seems to me like the traveler culture, in the 21st century has adapted itself, to a 21st century type of life. So that's where you've seen guys like Billy Joe Saunders. I mean, Billy Joe Saunders actually represented England in the Olympics. That was a big deal that they had a traveler in the Olympics.
Yeah,
I
remember the little
so
vignettes that they
you're in a
made.
situation there where I think that this generation is crossing over and saying, they're very confident in what they've been doing. I put it this way, those people have been fighting all along, right? That goes without saying.
Mm-hmm.
And they've always done their own thing. There have been instances of the past where they took the bare knuckle champion and put him in with a boxer and things like that. And I think the levels have shown themselves to be different. I think that's what Billy Joe Saunders, Tyson Fury are doing in the modern era. Is I think they're trying to go ahead and erase that stigma that, it was more of a brawl and a bare knuckle, and that they do have style as well. So yeah, I think it's an interesting crossroads of culture and things like that. But, people have backed their boxers for years and years, and hundreds of years. Jews and blacks and now travelers and, Eastern Europeans, Polish people,
Yep.
I mean, so it's like, people back their fighters, and, the travelers are taking a step onto the world scene, I think in grand fashion. I think, in a way where with neither guy, I'm not a big Billy Joe Saunders fan. I think he should fight more. But with neither guy, they're really going to fall short with, like, those guys don't have the technique or anything to hang with the modern guys. But those guys are pretty edgy for their weight classes. So I think that they achieved something for the 21st century for the travelers that's different than they did last century.
I agree with that.
They were fighting all along.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I respect their culture as well.
Oh, yeah.
I'd
love to be there, like in a bar, in a London
with
bar.
With the hay bales.
Yeah, dude, I would, and either watching like a soccer match or even like a boxing bout with, one of their British boxers. You know what I mean? Like, I like to be part of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They say NASCAR's got really good parties.
To me,
I think boxing.
It's a little bit of an interesting thing. I pointed out to Mike one time during a conversation of our culture. It's like, you could be, like, for example, in a Walmart parking lot, and you're waiting for a spot, and then another jerk off comes in and gets in your spot. You guys wind up maybe in a little fist fight, and all of a sudden you got lawyers and people are suing each other and stuff. That's America.
Over a parking spot.
Yeah.
But the travelers don't have a lot of lawyers.
Yeah.
They settle things right on the spot.
Yeah, we're gonna handle this now.
I think there's something to be said for that.
I agree.
It's not like, you all hear from me. I know they figured it out right there in the parking lot.
That's good.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Miguel, what's next, in your opinion, for the heavyweights?
Well, the name we haven't said here is Tom Schwartz.
Yeah.
Tom Schwartz is the guy who is fighting Tyson Fury here in a couple of weeks, and that is next. Fury is expected to do the job, but then again, Joshua was expected to do this. To do his job. So it's something that the Fury match maybe gets a little bit more eyes on it. Probably will happen there is what we expect. And then I think that you're going to hear a lot of, rhetoric and going back and forth. But Wilder is signed to fight, so you can't get Wilder Fury next. Fury's probably going to have to take another fight before the end of the year. And those are the kinds of things that fall out. Alexander Usyk, as we mentioned it, there's the hope that we have another Evander Holyfield here. A guy who may be smaller, but coming up, it won't make a difference, and the guy has backed it up at that point. But we still have yet to see him operate as a heavyweight, so we'll see where he comes in. We have an American named Michael Hunter who is trying to do the same thing as Usyk. He's a one-time beat. He's only lost in his pro career to Usyk, and he also was a contender for the Joshua fight. So those are some of the guys that are interesting to see. Luis Ortiz is already booked. I'm interested to see how Jarrell Miller reacts and pulls out all this. Talk about a guy who's got to be killing himself.
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely.
Yeah, if I'm a loved one of his, I would probably call like the police non-emergency number and just ask for like a home check. just knock on the door. Check. Just make sure he's cool. Tell him people love him. I mean,
well, here. I'm going to close it with this. So with everything going on in the heavyweight division, with these 5 or 6 boxers that we just mentioned in this last half an hour, Deontay Wilder, Ortiz, Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua, Andy Ruiz, Alexander Usyk, Tom Schwartz, you know who wins? The fans.
Yeah.
There you go. With that, signing off. Miguel, thank you very much, man. Thanks for coming on and sharing your boxing knowledge with us. We'll see you on the flip side. Thank you.